This is KTN News. All right, it's now 3 minutes after 8 and it's time for Your Money. And as I'd mentioned earlier on, we're going to be looking at the impact that a flight from Nairobi to New York, which has been much talked about, is going to have on us as a country and as an economy. As you can see on one of the dailies today, I believe that's The Nation, how Kenya plans to gain from direct flights to the US. That's on the Daily Nation. But to have that conversation with me in studio, I have Dr. Betty Radier, who's the CEO for Kenya Tourism Board. Thank you for joining us this morning. And, well, it's definitely good news for Kenya.
Certainly.
Okay. Yes. Why is it good news?
It's good news on a number of fronts. It's good news for the tourism industry. It's good news for trade. It's good news for the country's perception in general. And obviously, it's good news for access to the destination. Because you're looking at cutting down travel time from 24 hours to 14 and a half hours. So it's significant, especially for a traveler.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, and of course the fact that now it's a direct flight, you don't have to stop anywhere, because one of the things that really fatigues is layovers. If you have to stop somewhere for 6-7 hours, then take another flight, of course changing over, that would be something. So of course it's good news for Kenya, as you've mentioned. But let's look at, first of all, the tourism front.
Yes.
How is that likely to impact tourism in Kenya?
So currently the US is our number one source market, having grown by about 12% in the past year. We are over the 100,000 mark in terms of number of visitors from the US to US and North America to Kenya, and with a direct, and this is without a direct flight. So with a direct flight, which is almost half the amount of time of travel, we're looking at an uplift of almost 15% in the coming year. Obviously, there's a lot of investment that we're putting in the destination from a marketing perspective to position the destination favorably to a different number of audiences that are available to us in the US and North America. So from the tourism perspective, this growth is obviously going to impact the economy on two fronts. As you're aware, probably, that for every 10 tourists, we create one job.
Right.
So you can imagine with the increase of number of tourism, it will impact jobs. It will impact trade within the two countries. It will impact the perception of the destination as being, first of all, favorable, as being safe, as being a destination that is considered for a number of different aspects that will benefit the economy.
Okay, and I do know that there was a process before this was approved by the US for Kenya to be able to fly. Maybe just run us through that, because it's important, especially on what you mentioned, the question of security. For us to be allowed to fly through the US directly, then there must have been some process that Kenya had to go through, and KQ for that matter.
Okay, without stepping on obviously KQ's feet as relates to the process has been a long-going process in terms of being able to put in place the requirements to get Category 1 status. And there's a whole list of expectations that are put both on the airline and the airport and the country as in general. But having said that, now that we're going to be able to launch the flight on the 28th, we were able to go through that rigorous process. And it's not been like 6 months, it's been a number of years. So it's a process that both governments and both agencies have worked on for a long time. And therefore, it's a great relief as well as a great joy for us to be able now to finally have the first direct flight on the 28th of
And I'm
October.
sure that also has a way it works on perception, especially now from America to Kenya in terms of security. I mean, for many years we've had Kenya, flagged as a place that might not be secure because of Al-Shabaab attacks, and that seems now to be something that we can put behind us.
It certainly is, because just the latent fact that we have a direct flight, and we're the first East African country to have a direct flight to the US, already speaks volumes in terms of the perception around security. It speaks volumes in terms of the perception around efficiency of the country, efficiency of our airport, efficiency of being able to meet the standards that would allow you, the status, to be able to fly a direct flight into the US. It is not a simple feat. So even for businessmen, out of the US and out of Kenya, being able to have that direct access certainly changes the whole aspect of the language in which they communicate when they're trading. You can now say, I am able to deliver cargo, which will probably happen later in the year or early in 2019, but this is something that is going to significantly impact the way the two countries relate. You will find that we perceive that it will allow or make businesses from the US consider Kenya now as a destination where they can have their home offices,
right,
where they can place their offices, because it provides a hub for the rest of Africa, but also because of the direct flight, it makes that trade between the two countries and the interaction a lot easier.
A lot easier. Okay, and America is just one market that Kenya, of course, would be looking at boosting tourism by this direct flight. But there's also the ripple effect of other African nations possibly using Kenya as a stopover point, being by virtue of the fact that it's nearer, maybe more convenient. How is that likely to help us, especially in regards to tourism?
So Kenya has already been a hub for the rest of Africa for a number of years. And the national carrier Kenya Airways is able to connect to a number of African countries. Now that you have a direct flight, it means that it will rival other airlines. So from the perspective of determining which will be your stopover hub, Kenya is much more attractive because you're talking about 14 hours. Other hubs might be talking about 17 hours, 18 hours. So from the perspective of convenience and efficiency, Kenya immediately starts to rank right up there. So we will benefit, first of all, from that efficiency. And then secondly, you have a ripple effect that says you have travelers that now might consider a 1 or 2 stayover or layover in Kenya, and that immediately impacts our tourism industry, it impacts our trade, because it allows people to experience the destination, it allows them to interact within the destination in a way they wouldn't have considered before. So it's not just about being able to provide a hub, but it is providing an opportunity to expand a number of areas, which is trade, tourism, industry, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
How prepared are we, just simple basics, for instance, the airport, because we are likely to have an influx of more tourists, and these are, like you mentioned, there are those who maybe will take a day or two, but there are those who purely might use it just as a connection destination.
Yes.
But that means our airport needs to be very efficient, needs to be very secure, and also just, space and efficiency.
I must say a lot of work has been put in the airport. I'd in fact invite you to visit the airport. A lot of work has been put in the airport, especially in the areas of security, in efficiency, especially for this specific flight. There's a dedicated gate to this flight. But also there's been training going on within the airport, specifically on customer service, because this is key for anybody visiting or landing in an airport. You want there to be an immediate efficiency and an interaction with a person that is sensitive to the customer's needs. So that is training that has been ongoing for more than a year. So from the perspective of readiness of the airport, I would say the airport is ready.
It's ready.
Yes.
Do you think
there's
it's
a
big
lot
enough
more
to...
improvements that are currently going on. There's expansion going on in the airport. So with time, this is just the starting point. And with the impetus that this direct flight will give us, even from an economic perspective, we'll be able, obviously, to then develop a lot more the infrastructure around making it easy to move from arriving at the airport and in and around the destination.
Because I know right now Kenya Airways, Terminal 1 is purely dedicated to Kenya Airways.
Yes.
And I'm sure that would probably help. It's well done and spruced up. But do you think it's enough? Are we looking at a point where we'll probably need another terminal just to take care of that influx that we have now?
The Kenya Airports Authority already have a plan in place to expand the airport. And this has been a plan that is not a plan just because of the direct flight. It has been an ongoing plan.
Expansion plan.
And it is an expansion plan in their strategy. And this will happen with time to be able to not only cater for our direct flight, but obviously for the other airlines that are flying into the destination. And we have an increased number of airlines that are flying into the destination of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and Mombasa, in some cases, as direct flights. So both those airports will be reviewed and refurbished with time.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's also the question of export. This now also opens up an opportunity because, again, if one is in the export business and you're exporting things to the US or importing for that matter, just by virtue of the route that they use may take time, and that also makes it a bit more expensive. Is this likely to bring down the cost and therefore encourage a bit more export to the US?
I can't speak to the cost, but I can speak to the efficiency. You're probably aware that the number of stops you make impacts the cost of being able to move goods from one place to another, whether it be land, by sea, or by air. And therefore, the direct flight will immediately ease that efficiency, and I'm sure to a certain extent review the cost, impact the cost. I didn't say downwards. Impact the cost.
We're hoping it's downwards. We're hoping it's downwards.
Yes.
Okay, so what encouragement would you have for Kenyans who are looking at opportunities to take advantage of? Because sometimes we are guilty of waiting for government to do things, but here's an opportunity that possibly may be staring at us, but some don't know how to tap into it.
Okay, so I think there's an onus on the government as well as in partnership with the airline to provide enough information in terms of when there will be, when, say, for example, people who are interested, business people, will be able to move cargo from the US to Kenya. It's not an immediate thing. But also there's an understanding that we have to educate and provide enough information in terms of the processes, in terms of the clearances, in terms of the developments that they must take into consideration to be able to start to do that inter-country trade. It's not an automatic thing that happens. We want to be efficient following the regulations on the US side and also following the regulations on the Kenya side. Because the worst thing that you want to have is customer dissonance in the first opportunity that people are trying to trade between the two countries. So I think that we have taken, we will take the responsibility of communicating clearly what the structures, rules and regulations of beginning that trade is. And then the onus is on investors, business people, and citizenry at large on both sides to consider what are the opportunities that the two countries offer in terms of trade and other engagements. Yeah.
All right, and of course this speaks also to a friendlier, cozier relationship between Kenya and the US, and I want to hear your comments on this. I mean, we do have, right now for Kenyans, we can get a 5-year visa almost automatically, unless now, of course, you have special conditions which would mean that it's restricted. But if you walked into the embassy today, you could get a 5-year visa, which of course speaks to an opening up of the border between Kenya and the US. Possibly how we can also take advantage of that. We're not just receiving tourists, but we as Kenyans too can take advantage of going to the US and doing whatever it is that we can to at least have, you know, that relationship and trade with them.
I think as both countries, we must be responsible and appreciate the rules and regulations of each country. But obviously, because we have a direct flight, there's an interest and there's a collaboration that's already understated that says the two countries want to have a partnership from a government-to-government perspective. This will then trickle down to the citizenry. So from the perspective of easing trade, of easing access, it is in the interest of both countries make this accessible to both trade people, citizenry who are planning to go on holiday, people who are looking at doing feasibility in either country. So I think from that perspective, we both want to make this work, and we want the trade to flourish. So I think the relationship between the two countries is going to be significantly improved.
And we already feel the effects of that. But also maybe speaking to those who possibly would want to open up trade, especially the hotel industry, the hospitality industry. This is a great opportunity for them to market their centers and their places, and how possibly one can do that to ensure that they take advantage of now the visitors that will be coming in.
So as you're well aware, if the US is our number one source market, this is already an exercise that has gone on over years. Our private sector have been marketing the destination to the US market, and has seen great benefit. The US moved from the number 2 market to the number 1 source market in the past year. So from the private sector perspective, that is the travel and tour trade, as well as the hoteliers, we've seen significant benefits from selling the destination to that market. The US market also offers a fairly high-end traveler, and therefore in terms of return on investment, it is a great market. It is currently the market that allows us or brings us visitors that, because of how long the flight was, spend 7 to 10 days in the destination. This immediately means that a lot more revenue is spent per visitor in the destination. And this trickles down in the backward integration to obviously the business people, the hoteliers, the service providers, the trade, food vendors, and it goes right down the chain.
Okay.
So this is something that has already been going on. So this will just ease that process for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe as we conclude, how to take advantage of the regional reach now that we have. Kenya, of course, by virtue of the fact that we're not landlocked, we already have an advantage over a number of countries, Rwanda, Uganda. But now with this, again, brings yet another opportunity for us to trade with our neighbors and Africa as a whole. How can we take advantage of that?
So we've already been having an interaction within the region through the Northern Corridor Integration Program. You know that we already have a UniVisa that allows any visitor from any part of the world and regionally to visit Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda on one visa that is $100, which they can get at the airport. So having a direct flight, number one, opens up not only Kenya, but the region, because you now have visitors or travelers who take a short, a 14-hour flight to the destination, which is Kenya, but immediately are able to connect to the other regions. So even from a trade perspective, we will benefit a great deal. But our regional countries will also benefit from the ripple effect of that trade, because when we have investors coming into the destination, they will probably not only look at one destination, they will look at the destination Kenya and any other lucrative destinations around the region. So indirectly, those countries will benefit from the fact that we are the first East African country to have a direct flight into the US.
All right, and of course this has been received with a lot of enthusiasm by the government as well. And we have the CS of Tourism, Najib Balala, and this is what he had to say about the direct flight to New York.
Tourism Board working with Kenya Airways to make sure we partner with New York tourism organizations for both ways, benefits, but those numbers to increase, and then definitely opening up to Atlanta and to Washington, D.C.
We are going to remodel Terminal B, Terminal C, and Terminal D. This is to ensure that within a few years from now, the capacity of this airport will be enhanced from the current 7.5 million to 12 million passengers.
All right, and definitely a lot of enthusiasm there. Maybe just your closing remarks as we launch the flight. It's been launched on Friday. Is it on Friday?
28th.
28th.
Yes.
Yes,
Sunday.
your closing remarks.
So the closing remarks is, first of all, we are